Alright, so here we have the 6.1 through 6.4 review video. Make sure as you're going through these, you pause the video when we get to a new slide, you do the question on your own, and then you check to see if our answers match up. So our first question here, what it asks us to do is it wants us to write the percent as a decimal. So remember how we do that is we just move our decimal place in our percentage 2 over. So we start here, we go 1, 2, so we have 0.3125 as our decimal. Now for the second one, we have 81.7%. We're going to move our decimal over 2 again, so now we have 0.817. Alright, so these ones we're writing the percent as a decimal also. So we are going to move our decimal places 2 over. 1, oops, let me get it better. We got 1, 2, so we have 0.43. Here we do the same thing, even though it has 3 digits. So now we have 1.58. Alright, so for all of these ones, we're doing it backwards now. We're writing the decimal as a percent. So when we did it the other way, we moved 2 to the left, so now we're going to move 2 to the right. 1, 2. So now we have 0.8, and then we're going to put a percent on the end of it. Here we have 9%, and here we have 182%. Alright, so now it's asking us to order the numbers from least to greatest, and you have to show or explain your method. All this means is just show me the math that you used to get where you got. So we have 0.22, 0.222. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all these to decimals because I already have 2 the decimal way. So 22% as a decimal, I would move over 2. So this is 0.22. And then I know that 1/4 is 0.25. So now I can start putting them in order. I know that my smallest is 0.22 because that really has a 0 on the end of it. And I also have one over here. So it doesn't matter what order you put those in, obviously, but I'm going to go 0.22. Or actually, I think on your test it wants you to put it in original form. So this is how it would need to look. You would need to put either 22% or 0.22 first, it wouldn't really matter. Then 0.222, and then finally 1/4. Alright, what this question is asking us is it says that the table shows the results of 8 teams competing in a scavenger hunt. Which team collected the most items? So again, we're having to put things in order. So I think the easiest thing to do for these is just figure out which form is shown the most. So here we have a percent, fraction, decimal, percent, decimal, fraction. So I think the easiest thing for us to do is going to be put these as percentages. So I know 3/4, that's 75%. 0.8, if I move the decimal over 2, that's 80%. Then I already have 77.5%. And then I move it over 2, I have 82.5%. I'll get back to that one later. This is 76.25%. This is 81.25%. Now remember, how we turn fractions to percents is we need to always get it over 100. Now, I can't think of anything, 40 can't go into 100 easily, and 80 can't go into 100 easily. So actually what you can just do is just divide. So I have 29 divided by 40, so I put 29 on the inside, 40 on the outside. If you guys do that at home, you should get 725, so you move that decimal over, so now I know that this is 72%, and then we do the same thing with 63 divided by 80. And if you do that at home, you should get 78.7875. So this is 78.75%. And then you just kind of look at the question. It says, which team collected the most items? So you want to look at the team that obviously has the biggest percent. So that would be team number 4. Had the most. And then you also want to look at the least. So the team with the least percentage, I believe, is going to be team number 5. Alright, so this one says on a fishing trip, 38% of the fish you catch are perch. Write this percent as a decimal. So I have 30, oops, let me get my pen. I have 38%, wants me to write it as a decimal. Going to move it over 2. It's going to be 0.38. 8, not H. 0.38. Alright, this one says you managed to hit 30 out of 35 baseballs in your last baseball game. Did you reach your goal of hitting 70%? So we have 30 out of 35, and we want to see if this is the same thing as 70%. So just like we did when we were ordering, we could divide these, or we could try to get our denominator to be 100. That might be easier for this one. So I can't get from 35 to 100, but if I divide each side by 5, or actually I don't want to divide by 5. If I divide each side by, let's do 5. I'm going to get 6 over 7. And if you know what this is as a percentage, you can just go from there. If you don't, you can either divide or try to get 100 as a denominator. I know it's going to be kind of hard to get 7 to 100, so I'm just going to divide. So I have 6 on the inside, 7 on the outside. 6 can't go into 7, so I'm going to put my little X there. I'm going to add zeros here. 7 goes into 60. Let's see. 7 will go into 68 times. It'll be 56. Subtract 4. Bring down the 0. 7 goes into 40. About 5 times. That's 35. So I'm already at 85%. So I did definitely reach my goal of 70%. So I would say yes for that one. This one asks us to write and solve a proportion or equation to answer the question, and the question is 23 is what percent of 300? So there's really a couple of different ways I can do these. What I'm going to do is, I actually showed 2 ways in class. One was to set up a proportion, which was A over W equals P over 100. But then we also talked about that we could just do the equation A equals P times W when you change your P into a decimal. So for this one, I'll do it both ways, but from then on, I'm just going to use this equation. So it's asking 23 is what percent of 300? So I know I'm looking for a percent, so I'm going to plug in my part, which is 23, my whole, which is 300, equals P, which I don't know, over 100. Now, if I do it this way, I'm going to do my cross multiplication. 23 times 100 is 2300, equals 300 P. So then I have to divide each side by 300. And so then you'll have to actually figure out what 23 divided by 300 is, but I have a handy dandy calculator here. So I get 7.66%. Now if I did that the other way, I would plug it into this equation here. So I know my part's 23. I don't know my percent, but I know my whole is 300. So actually I should rewrite this as 300p. I know that I need to get p by itself, so I'm going to divide by 300 on both sides. If you do that correctly, let's just make sure we get our answer right. You would get So when you do that division, you'll get that P is equal to 0.0766. Then remember, you need to move your decimal over 2 to change it into an actual percent. So that's 7.66%. So both of these ways will get you the exact same answer. The next one says that you need to write and solve a proportion or equation to answer the question. And the question is, what number is 65% of 80? So I am going to use that second equation. So A equals P times W. So we're asking for what number is 65% of 80. So I know that I'm looking for my part because it's is and of. Of always has to do with this whole, and is has to do with your part. I'll write that here. So we're looking for A. We know our percent is 65%, so I need to write that as my decimal, which is 0.65. And then my whole is 8. So for this one, I just have to do some multiplication. So if you guys want to do it on your own, I'll do it on my calculator. You should get 52. And then you can kind of always look at it and just see if it's right. So if I have 52, if I take 80 and I take 65% of that, I know it's going to be a little bit more than half of 80, which is 40, so 52 sounds about right. So my next one says what percent of 145 is 60. I'm going to do this one the proportion way. So I have my part, have my whole equals P over 100. I do my cross multiplication. So now I have 60 times 100. Actually, I am going to reduce here. So I can make this a 6, and I can make that a 10. So now I just have 60, who actually, I don't want to do that. Yep, don't do that. Don't listen to me. That was a mistake. I said I'm going to do these the equation way. So A equals P times W. 60 equals 145 P, because I'm looking for my percent. So now I'm going to divide. Ooh, why that one away? So I'm going to divide by 145 on both sides. 60 divided by 145 is going to give me 4 and 3, but then I have to move a 2 over, so my percentage is going to be 41.3%. So let me look at the question, see if that answer makes sense. So if we take a 145, we take 41% of that. That would make sense that we would get about 60. Alright, so for this one, I look at this keyword and I have of, so I know that I'm looking for my whole. So I'm going to have 9 as my part, and then is equal to, let's see, we need to change that to our decimal, so we're going to move it to the left 2. This is really 0.007 times W, because I'm looking for my of, so I'm looking for my whole. Now I'm going to divide each side by 0.007. Now I get that my whole is equal to, let's see here, 1,285.71. So now we look back. So if we take the number 9, that's 0.7% of what number? It would make sense that our number would be a lot bigger. So our final number is 1,285.71. Our last question here says you earned a 97% on a math test. You answered 37 questions correctly. How many questions were on the test? So we kind of need to think about this one a little bit differently.